Okay, here's our first example of an equation that we're going to solve. It doesn't have any fractions or decimals, but it does have these parentheses, so we need to get rid of that. Now this is saying, if I read this left side, here's the equal sign. This says -5 times x plus 3. That means that this -5 is being multiplied times the x plus 3, so that means I need to distribute it here to get rid of the parentheses. So on this side, it'd be -5x minus 15, and on the left side, it'd be 5x minus 1. So the next step in the equations, if you wrote those down and you can refer back to them on how to solve equations, is that we need to use the addition property. The addition property means we need to get the x term on one side and the non-x on the other side. It doesn't matter which side you move them to. I tend to move the negative, so I'm going to do the opposite here of adding 5x, so that gives me 10x minus 1 on the left side and a -15 on the right side. So now I still don't have my x term by itself, so I'm still making use of that addition property by adding 1 to both sides, and I have 10x equals -14. Now when we read this, I know we say 10x, but that means 10 times x. So to get rid of the 10 times x, we're going to divide by 10. If we divide this side by 10, we have to divide this side by 10 to maintain the equality. So this would just be x equals -14 tenths, or it would be x equals -7 fifths. Oops, can't read that 5 very well. 7 fifths. Okay? All right, let's do another example. I'm going to erase this one so I have more room. Okay, this one's a little bit bigger. It does have parentheses, but there's no fractions and there's no decimals yet. We'll get to those, don't worry. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this parentheses. How do I do that? I look before it and it says a +3 times this. So I'm going to distribute and I get 6s minus 12. I do not distribute to this plus 12 over here because this 3 does not, that 12 is not included in that parentheses. So I just bring that 12 down. Equals, I'm going to clear this parentheses by distributing here, 6s minus 6. And then this one here, I'm going to use a, where'd my red marker go? Fell on the floor. I'm going to show you that this right here is saying s plus 2, but what's in front of it is it's technically saying -1 times the s plus 2. So I need to distribute this negative sign to all of that. You can never just drop your parentheses. You have to make sure you understand what's going on in front of it. So this would be -s minus 2. So the next step was to combine like terms on each side. So over here, I can combine these two to get just 6s because -12 plus 12 is 0 equals. Here I can combine the 6s and the -s to get 5s. And then I can combine a -6 and a -2 to get -8. Okay? So the next step in our order to solve equations is to get our variables on one side and our non-variables on the other. Since I have non-variables over here, I'm going to leave the non-variable there and I'm going to move this +5s. I move it by doing the opposite. This is plus 5s. So how do I get rid of plus? I subtract a 5s. Subtract 5s, subtract 5s, and I have s equals -8. And there's our solution. Okay? So I promised you a fraction, so guess what's next? A fraction. All right, we have fractions. That's what everybody loves. Their favorite thing is fractions. So how do we get rid of those fractions? Because the first step on our solving equations is said to get rid of the decimals, get rid of fractions, and get rid of parentheses. We've already done a couple examples getting rid of parentheses, but now we have these fractions. Well, to get rid of them, we need to find our LCD. That's the least common denominator. And what is the LCD of all our denominators? First thing you need to know is how many terms we have. We have x over 6 is one term, x over 8 is a term, and 1 over 8 is a term. So we need to know what is our LCD of 6 and 8. Well, we can use 48. We can just always multiply them together and just use those. We could have used 24 if we wanted. But whatever is a common denominator. I know it says least, but I say whatever's the common denominator. So I'm going to multiply every term by LCD to get rid of fractions. Now, when you multiply by the LCD or a common denominator, your fraction should go away. If you still have a fraction, then you didn't multiply by the least common denominator. So I'm going to multiply every one of these terms by 48. I know we could have done 24 also. And I'm going to simplify each term. So 6 goes into 48 how many times? 8 times. So that means I have 8 times x. You're going to multiply it times whatever's here. 8 goes into 48 how many times? 6 times. And then 8 goes into 48 6 times again. So then 6 times 1 would be 6. Now I have a simple linear equation. I don't have fractions anymore, and we can simplify with the rest. We simplify both sides, get our variables on one side, and so forth. So this would be 8 minus 6 would be 2x equals 6. I'm going to divide by 2, x equals 3. And there's our answer. Okay? Let's do one more problem here. All right, so first question I always ask is how many terms do we have here? So y'all make your guess. We have 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms, 4 terms. These fraction bars glue this whole thing together. So this right here is one whole term. This is a term, this is a term, and all of this is a term. So we need to find the common denominator of 3, 1, and 9. What is the common denominator between 3, 1, and 9? LCD. That would be 9. So I'm going to multiply every term by 9. So I'm going to put a 9 out here, a 9 out here, a 9, and a 9. And then we're going to simplify. So the denominator should always go away. I'm going to simplify this. 3 goes into 9. How many times? 3 times, and I'm just going to rewrite this so you can see it clearly. So I have left 3 times x minus 1 plus 3 times 2 equals 9 times x minus 2x plus 3. Now be careful, just because this 9 and this 9 cancels, you don't want to just drop these parentheses because we have a subtraction sign out front. And that's telling us that we need to subtract all of this, not just the 2x. That's a common mistake people make. So now I'm going to get rid of the parentheses by using the distributive property. So I have 3x minus 3 plus 6 equals 9x, subtract 2x, subtract 3. Remember distributive property here. That's a common mistake. People make that all the time. Now I can use the combine like terms, and I'll combine these. We have 3x plus 3 equals 7x minus 3. I want to get my x's on one side, non-x's on the other. So I'm going to subtract 3x here. It does not matter which x you move or subtract. You just might have a positive or a negative side. So I tend to move the smaller variable just so that I'm dealing with positive numbers. But that's not always, possible either. So then we have 3 equals 4x minus 3. I add 3 to both sides. And I have 6 equals 4x. My handwriting's getting a little sloppy here. So once again, if I read this, it says 6 equals 4 times x. So then I can divide by 4 on both sides, and I get 3 halves equals x. I just went ahead and simplified that. And you are expected to simplify all fractions. And also Connect Math, I think they require it as well. Okay. All right, so that's the end of that section. We'll move on to 4.5 next.